Welcome to the show. My name is Karynn Krill Weinstein, and this here is my husband, Dave Weinstein. We're going to discuss how we got here today. That is the show for today. Dave and I have been together, married for 16 years, and we've been together for 22 years. And every day that goes by makes me happy and makes me feel glad to be married to Dave, my husband, forever.
I agree completely. It's been the best 22 years of my life. Best day of my life, the day I met Karynn.
Thank you, Dave.
Only gotten better since then, and every day I love her more.
We've grown together a lot. Everything we go through is togetherness. We did things together all the time. And we grow and matured into where we are today by being together. He helped me to become a better person, and I helped Dave become a better person.
Oh,
each day passes by, we love each other even more.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Good, good. So I'd like to talk a little bit about myself. My husband and I, we got married on June 5th, 1999. It was, on the same day, my parents' 40th anniversary. It was a great day. I gave her my white roses. And we had a wedding and we celebrated their anniversary at the same time. They had their own dance to the music, Kenny Rogers, through the years. It was a very exciting day. And we were married on my parents' 40th anniversary. Do you remember that, Dave?
Oh yeah, it was a great day.
And it just kept getting better. Every day kept getting better and better.
Yeah, it was a great ceremony, a great place, all good friends. We had a great time. I think everybody else had a great time.
And to mention this, we got married in the same church as my parents.
Yes, that was unique.
Yes, a beautiful church called St. Joseph's Church in Shelton. I'd like to talk a little bit of how I got to where I am today. As a child, I found that I was a leader as a child. I'd get all the students in class at school all in line. The teacher wasn't there. Everybody else went into the school after playtime. And I got everybody in line, the boys and girls. And the teacher came out to get us, and we were standing there waiting for her. And she was so happy. We went up into our classroom, and she put a heart on the chalkboard. That was very nice. So even as a child, I was a leader. I think I was born to lead. I played in the high school band. I was 14 years old, in 8th grade. Well, band marched in the Rose Bowl parade. It was quite an event. And also, my family, when we had a day off for school because of snow, my father would say, pack up, put warm clothes on, put the skis on top of the roof of the car, and say, we're going skiing. What an experience. We were all done, my brother and sister and I were all done skiing. And from where we were sitting, the lodge, we could see my younger brother skiing. And he went over a hill, and we see the man who manages the chairlift, put him over his shoulder and brought him up over the hill and put him down. And my brother continued to ski. We all saw that, and we thought that was the funniest thing. Then we all went out and went to my younger brother, John, and helped him and get him some food and some hot chocolate. So that was a very eventful day. Dave, when I was skiing, everyone was new at skiing. It was great. Like I was standing at the top of the hill in my skis and trying to figure out how I'm going to get down the hill because we were all self-taught. That's dangerous. And a woman, she didn't know how to stop. She plowed right into me. Didn't hurt me at all, but it pushed me off that little embankment and went down the hill. And he said, oh, well, let's see what happens. And I got down to the bottom of the hill safely. I've seen people in chairlifts. Their clothing will get stuck on the chair. And they'd be saying, screaming, stop the chair, as they start going down the hill in the chairlift. And fortunately, they had person at the top of the chair to stop the chairlift and get her and help her. I was getting off the chairlift one day. These are old skis, and I clapped them together to get the snow off it. Both skis came off while I was on the chairlift. And the man saw me, and we had those straps attached to your ankles. This is going back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, so they were old skis. And here we were. I couldn't ski down the hill to get off the chairlift. I wasn't upset because I knew there'd be someone up there to stop the chairlift. And so I got off the chairlift. I had to stand up, bend over, pick up my skis, and walk down the little slope so we could ski down and get away from the chairlift. I had to walk down that and go at least 20 yards away so I don't obstruct other people from getting off the chairlift. And it was very funny. I just bent over. Everyone was laughing.
And I wish I could have seen that. I could have used a good laugh.
What an experience skiing.
Well,
it was a great event.
As you probably know, I'm not a big fan of skiing. I went once. That was enough. It was the first time I was with Karynn. And we did fine on the little bunny hills. I had no problem. I said, well, let's try the bigger hill. Not a good idea. I ended up falling. My ski got planted into the ground, and something had to give, and it wasn't the skis or the bindings. It was my hip.
Yes,
and
what happened to your hip, Dave?
I ended up fracturing my hip, and I still have 4 screws in it holding it together.
That is the reason why it has a limp to this day.
Yeah, it's not, it's not a problem now. Just as long as I don't hit right where the screws are, I'm fine. And for a while it was a problem getting through the airports when they used to have the medical detectors. Sometimes the screws would set it off. But at the time the doctor said he'd rather put the screws in it than give me an artificial hip, because that was over 20 years ago. And he said you'd need a new hip every 20 years or so. They'd have to replace it. I guess now they're better. So he put the screws in it, and except for a limp, I'm fine. Obviously, I don't ski anymore. I don't want to try it. But I have no problem getting around. Very little pain. You can tell I work with a little bit of a hip. And, maybe someday I'll need an artificial hip, but I'm fine with what I have. Back then the doctor said, back then I was young enough, and the bone rehealed. I just couldn't walk on it or put any pressure on it for 6 months. So it made it a little tough being on crutches for 6 months and then slowly rebuilding my strength. But I think I can do it. I have no problem walking. I don't run, but Karynn and I go walking our mile in the mornings, and it's fine. She helps keep me in shape.
Yes, that night, we were dating at the time for about 6 months or 7 months. And that day, he was taken in by ambulance to Norwalk Hospital. It was about 12 o'clock midnight, and the orthopedic surgeon came out, and they gave David medication, and just before he actually fell asleep. I said, Dave, I love you, and I gave him a kiss on the lips, and that was the day that I fell in love with him. Because he's such a beautiful man. He did not complain. He did not get mad. He knew it was nobody's fault, and he was like, okay, this happened. Now it's time to move on and continue with my life and not allow this injury to my hip to stop me from doing all the things he wants to do. Is that correct?
Yep, and as I said, if getting the hip got her to love me, it was worth breaking the hip.
Yeah, and 6 years later we married.
Yep, and went for the physical rehab, which was it was tough, the physical therapy, but at that time I worked for the government, so I had plenty of time off, and I just enjoyed, well, I shouldn't say enjoyed it, the PT or physical torture wasn't easy, but I got through it.
Right. He has his ideas and thoughts, and how he handled the situation was superb.
Yeah, because you can't worry about it. It happened, move on. And
Right.
don't let it stop you.
So what we did, Dave, we turned a bad thing into a good thing.
Yeah.
'Cause that's when I really said, I like this man. I want to be with him.
That's it. It's worth it. I'd do it again.
And then I fell in love.
Yeah.
So I participated in Charlton High School swim team. I was a diver on the swim team in high school. I played basketball in high school and had a rewarding time at high school. I was in the band. We traveled to Toronto and Virginia and Philadelphia. So I was able to go in the band and we do some traveling and sightseeing and doing things with my friends. When we went to the Rose Bowl, the whole plane, the jet, was filled with all us high school students. We had a great time on the plane. And the stewardess didn't. But it was fun to travel with, I'd say about 100 of your friends.
That must have been fun.
It was, and then we were all in a hotel room, and we all had a good time going from room to room. And then while we were in Pasadena, we celebrated New Year's at 9 o'clock at night and not 12 midnight. So we could get up early in the morning and go to the parade route. It's really, really great experience being in the band. So I finished my high school years. Everything went well. I attended Southern Connecticut State University and received my bachelor's degree in physical education. But I didn't really have a desire to teach in the school system, so I had a variety of different jobs. I also was, in college, I was also a 1 meter and 3 meter diving board participant. And I did pretty well. In 3 meter diving board, I was third place in New England Championship. And I was really proud of myself for doing that. How were your days in high school, Dave?
They were fine. I wasn't a great student, but I got by. And
David had it. You didn't have to study much because it came to you really easily.
Yeah, I didn't study much. My sister, she was very brilliant, one of the valedictorians.
Right.
So, I was happy with my C's. I never studied much in high school. It wasn't until I got to college that something dawned on me. Like, I did a little bit of studying. Said, gee, wow, if you study for a test, you can really do good on it. I never did that in high school. And, I went to Central Connecticut, and once again, I got fine. Had no problem with grades. Just learning to study.
David has this special ability, and for all your students out there listening to us, I think you should realize that Dave could learn something on his own. That is amazing. He's like on different areas. For example, using the camera or other things, the computer. He taught himself how to use the computer, and that is so important growing up to be able to do, because it saves you a lot of money on being tutored.
Yeah, back when I was learning the computer, it was a long time ago. Computers were just coming out, so there was nothing in school. When I had at work, I was with the Internal Revenue Service, and they had computers, but not a lot. It wasn't until I got my own computer, and as I said, I had no classes, just a lot of trial and error, and it seemed to come out great. I'm obviously still learning things with everything, but I'm lucky, I guess. I taught myself, and I know what I'm doing on the computer pretty well.
Yes, it took him a long time to teach me how to use the computer, but he was a very good teacher, and it took me 10 years to be comfortable in front of a computer. What happened to you after high school, Dave?
I said I went to Central Connecticut for 4 years. Got through there, had a good time, made a lot of good friends. Once again, nice, good, be average, nothing spectacular.
What did you study?
Bachelor's degree, I was for finance. And then after I got out of college, I then went to work for People's Bank for a while. And, after a few years of that, and I realized this is what, a bachelor's degree would get me, I said, you know what, now I'm ready to go back for more. So then while I was working, I went for my master's degree at University of Bridgeport, so I can get something better. And it was nice at the time. People's Bank they paid for approximately 80% of my degree, which I enjoyed. But I realized banking wasn't for me, dealing with the people. So I got my master's degree. I thanked them for paying. And I went off and got another job.
Good. After I finished college, I moved to Florida immediately. Back then, we had really cold winters. So I went down to Florida to warm up.
She still needs it.
Yeah, still need to be warmed up, even if it's 50 to 60 degrees outside, right, Dave?
Yep.
Well, I went to school in Florida and started to become a paramedic. Great experience. That was I really loved being a paramedic. And you're doing basically very similar things that an emergency room physician would do. I saved 2 people in separate incidents. Both were witnessed cardiac arrest, and I brought both of them back with no brain damage and no heart damage. And that was part of my highlight of my experiences as a paramedic. Also, another positive thing that happened to me while being a paramedic, I was able to deliver a baby. I'm very proud of that. That was a great experience to be the first one to touch that baby when it was delivered. And we went to the hospital, and she was admitted in the hospital, and the baby was admitted, and everything turned out just fine. So I did paramedic work for 6 years, and I enjoyed every minute of it. After I did paramedic work for 6 years, I went back to college, and I got my master's degree in exercise physiology, and that was fine. And after that, I went to school. I went to Darien YMCA and worked as a personal trainer. Did that for a few years, and worked at YMCA as a personal trainer. I was certified in National Academy of Sports Medicine, certified personal trainer, and I enjoy doing that as well. Dave, what have you done after you finished college?
Well, after I got my master's degree, I left banking. I had enough. At that point, I was helping people. I don't like helping people that much, I felt at the time. So I went to work for somebody who definitely people don't consider some place that helps people, the IRS.
Internal Revenue Service, yes.
Yes, I decided to work there for a while. And you go from helping people to hurting people, or catching people that are cheating and not doing the right thing.
Didn't you go to a person's home to do an audit, and they barely had enough money to feed their children? How did that make you feel?
I did not enjoy that at all. That was one of my audits that I had. It was what they call a kitchen table audit, where I was working off of the guy's kitchen table. He worked all night cleaning offices, and then he would come home, and while I was doing the audit, he'd be in and out of sleep. That was his usual bedtime.
Right.
And I was going through his stuff. He couldn't prove a lot of his expenses, probably because they weren't legitimate. Unfortunately, he said he had to represent himself because he couldn't afford to pay his accountant to represent him. And as I went through his work, he told me he couldn't prove any of his expenses because he had a squirrel in his attic that ate all of the receipts. Didn't sound too good, but I kind of said, okay, can you show me something? I was kind of hoping he'd show me a receipt with a squirrel bite on it so I could prove him, but he couldn't. Obviously, the expenses weren't legitimate. So I had to make the adjustment for him, which was, quite a bit. And I felt terrible because when I was going through his records, I could see he had no money. A lot of his mortgage payments were late. Unfortunately, he got bad advice from his accountant and should have just paid the taxes up front, but he didn't. And I really felt bad about having to get him for his what he owed, but I just had to do my job. And as far as I understand, when I gave him the adjustment, I said, hey, it's a lot, but go see somebody in the collection. They'll set you up in an installment agreement. So over time, he was able to pay everything off.
How many years were you with the IRS?
I spent 8 years with them. And I said I worked with the individuals, but my last few years was in what they called the large case division, which was just auditing Fortune 500 companies. So at least then when you hit somebody with a huge adjustment, you don't feel so bad. But, you know, at that time, I worked a lot of the old timers who had been there for years. And a lot of them said, you know, it used to be a great job, but not anymore. They suggested I get out while I could and move on, because back then they were just starting to cut budgets. And basically you would have no pay raise, you know, a slight cost of living increase, and that would be it. I was at a point where I wasn't going to get any farther. I didn't get along too much with my management at the time. I didn't learn how to keep my mouth shut. I had a manager who I thought was completely incompetent. One time on a case, he took it and held it by the staples to make sure I stapled it together. And instead of keeping it quiet, I had to tell him what I thought of him for doing it. So I wasn't going anywhere. They couldn't get rid of me, but I realized I'd have to spend another 30 years at the level I was at. So that's it. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to look and get out of it, which was the best thing I did.
Dave, isn't this about the time we met each other?
Yep, somewhere around that time we met, because I was just finishing up my time with the Internal Revenue Service when I had my hip problem.
Right.
And it was nice. I was able to take a lot of time off, you know, and get paid for it. So I like that. I went through all of my sick leave, but they would advance me sick leave to cover it. So I was able to take, I believe, 2 or 3 months off, get full pay. So, you know, there are good things about working for the government. I learned an awful lot about taxes and a lot about how to deal with people. As I said, when you have to tell somebody who doesn't have a lot of money that they owe $30,000 in back taxes, it's tough. And I learned a lot, and I don't want to do it again. I went back to helping people.
Yes, exactly.
Yep,
You're such a nice, caring, loving person. You decided to change your career, not to penalize the people when he was an IRS agent, but he went to people who needed his help interacting with the IRS, resolving issues with the taxes, and he was now working for the good guy.
Yeah, when I left the IRS, I went to work for a small CPA firm. It was during tax time, and I know going in it was questionable how long it would last, but I learned a lot of how to prepare taxes. I worked them through one tax season, and at the end they said, "Gee, I'm sorry, we have to let you go." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." You know, you knew from the beginning it wasn't for me, but I said to myself, you know what, if I'm going to work 12, 13-hour days, I'm going to do it for myself. And I do. And I've never been happier since I went to work for myself.
Dave has his own business for now, since 1994, he has had his own business. And people really appreciate all that he does for them. They really like being with him. He says when he was an IRS agent, he had to be stern and serious. And now with his business, he could spend extra time with his client. And I remember you saying to me, one of your clients, you're sitting, talking with them, you found some more deductions. And if you didn't talk to this man, oh, okay, here we go, we got another deduction. And it was helpful for this man.
Yeah, it was very good. You know, that's one thing I like working for myself. If you work for one of the big tax preparation firms or CPAs, they're very strict on billable hours. You can't spend too much time. I don't like to be that way. I work for myself. You know, I give a little extra time, and I was just chatting with some taxpayer, and she was complaining, you know, about how her daughter, who was in college, had to drop out, and she wasn't getting help from her ex-husband, and she wasn't working, and the full story. And I looked at her and said, you know what? You now have another dependent. And that was just because I didn't rush her out, and while I was finishing up, we were just chatting. And it saved her, basically, she went from having to pay money to getting a nice little refund. So that's why I enjoy taking my time and treating clients like friends, not a piece of money. And that's the way I like to do my business. I work for myself. I have a nice set of clients. And as I said before, the best thing I ever did was go to work for myself.
Have your own business. He has an office right in the home, and that's really convenient, because if you can't go upstairs or if you're in a wheelchair, he's right on the first floor.